What is up, everybody? Gary Simon here. So you may have heard recently within the past few days an app that you never heard of before called PenPot. Now, PenPot is a free and open source UI UX design and prototyping app. Open source meaning it is going to be 100% free. So this is going to be the design that we create here in the PenPot app, which you're looking at right here. It looks very similar to traditional UI UX design prototyping apps. So penpot.app is the actual website address. And here you can go ahead and just sign up for free and you can get started. And this is exactly what we're going to take a look at in this sort of crash course. Now, I do have to say that at the time of recording this video, they lack some pretty significant features that we've come to know using apps like XD and Figma. Those are, there's no component states or micro interactions, meaning you can't have a component and then just be able to have different states like a hover state or whatever state you want to define. So that's kind of, a real buzzkill. There's no auto layout and there's also no plugins at all. So these are things, of course, that they are definitely 100% going to be introducing. They say it themselves. So it's one of those things, if depending on when you're watching this tutorial, it may be updated quite a bit already. Now, I also wanted to mention, because of the news of Adobe buying Figma, I don't think at this point in time, it's very early on, that it necessarily means you have to switch. It really, they spent $20 billion. Let's hope that they don't really screw it up. I'm not planning on switching myself anytime soon, unless, an app like penpot.app really ends up being just as good, if not better. So as always, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you probably want to be a better designer. And if that's the case, how much do you really want it? Because at DesignCourse.com, I've created a UI UX course that will help you go from designing layouts that I might rate a 4 or 5 up to 8 and beyond. But more important than that, as a better designer, this means that you can land higher paying clients and jobs. This course includes over 16 hours of video, 40 interactive UI design tests, and even mentorship where I personally take a look at your work that you submit, I review it, and many times I also revise it, providing you with great feedback to help you become a better designer. Now, for this video, I want you to use the coupon code UI2022, and that will give you 22% off at checkout. All right, so after you create your 100% free PenPot account, we can create a new project by clicking new file right here. Now, the designer in me just had to point this out. It's being very nitpicky, but when you hover over this little plus icon, this right here, that section, you don't want that. You want to have more white space even on the hover state between these elements. But you know what? Not a big deal. Okay, so we'll do a quick overview of the user interface here. So first, it's very familiar if you've used Figma, if you used XD or something. If you used Framer, very similar sort of setup when it comes to the panels. So on the left over here, we have a tabbed section sidebar. So we have your layers, very typical here, pages at the top, and this is just like not XD, but Figma that have the pages up here, and then the layers will be shown underneath. We have the assets over here for like components and stuff like that. The toolbars on the side, on this other side menu over here, and pretty straightforward. Just your drawing tools, your type tool. You insert an image over here with an image tool, and we'll get to that. It's not quite ideal in my opinion, but I'll show you that. And then over here, you have your inspector. So when you select an element, all of the properties will show up here that you can adjust them. You also have your alignment and all this stuff up here. And then also a prototype section, same exact thing as Figma, essentially. One thing that this app does have over Adobe XD, however, is the ability to change the background of your canvas, the background color. So that's going to be very handy. So if we change that, we can come here like a darker, if you have like a light sort of design you're working with, or in the inverse, you can leave that light if you have like a darker. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. So how do you start an actual, I guess you could call a frame, not framer, but Figma calls it a frame. Other things, I think XD calls it artboards. Well, if we come out right here, we'll see it says board. All right, so they call it a board. Now, there's no presets by default. You kind of just have to click on here, and then it will give you access to the size presets, like your different devices over here. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose, if I scroll all the way down, a web. I think maybe I'll do web 1920. All right. Now, one thing I don't like is if I hold my control or your command on Mac and you use your mouse scroll wheel, it goes from 100% here to 54 when it would, while I barely touch my mouse scroll wheel. All right, so that's kind of frustrating. I'd like it to be a little bit more incremental if possible. Yeah, it's just like a small kind of gripe right there. And so let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is we're going to create a rectangle. All right, so rectangle here, R for the shortcut, which is very familiar, just as in Figma. We're going to left click and just drag that sucker out. Yeah, maybe something right around here. All right, and I want to make this a gradient. So again, the property inspector over here, we have all of our properties. We can see we have size, position, rotation, and your corner radius. Again, this is all pretty much just like Figma. You have your blend modes right here, opacity or pass through, your fills, and then you have strokes and shadows, blurs, and it's almost like a replica of Figma. All right, so we can come out here, and in this section, we can create our gradient. All right, so for the first color for our gradient, I'm going to go ahead and choose something. Probably, I kind of want something like pastel. All right, and then for this one, again, we want to make sure we're going to boost this all the way up. There we go for the opacity. And for this one, we're going to use like an analogous sort of color. We're going to go into the blues, kind of. Now let's see what that looks like. I'll zoom back out here. Now we can also change the angle of this linear gradient. I haven't actually tried changing the angle yet, but you just, oops, no. Let's try it again. I want to select this. There we go. All right, so we can kind of do something like this and that. Maybe we'll add a color stop in the middle. I haven't even tried adding a color stop yet here, so let's see how easy or difficult they made this. Oh shoot, there we go. Okay, so if I double click, it's not working. If I right click, it's not working. How do I add another color stop? That's kind of interesting. So what's this? No. Well, that's interesting. I guess I can't do it. All right. Well, going back, well, that's basically. I'm hoping that I'm just missing something, and you can actually have more than 2 color stops for your gradients. If not, hopefully they'll update that. So if you want to have a gradient, you can completely do it like this. Let's see, for instance, we wanted to have a photograph background. Well, let's see how we can do that. Now, typically, like on Figma, if you go to fill, you'll have the option to just like right here. I think the same thing on Framer is true as well. You can just choose an image, like in a tab navigation, but I don't see that option here. So you have to do it differently. And so let me show you how to do that. You click over here on the image tool. And when you go to the image tool, hopefully there's nothing you shouldn't be seeing here. You'll be taken to just your file, your prompt to open up your files. So I'm going to go ahead and I downloaded real quickly an image. This image right here from Unsplash. I try to remember to link this in the YouTube description. But what you want to do is just go ahead and take that, drag that to your desktop, or just like download the medium version. That's actually what I did initially. If I get Control J, show in folder, there we go. I can grab the actual URL of my downloads. We can go back here, and then we can come to this. All right, so I can paste that in, and then click on this. All right, so here it is. Let's go ahead and leave this here, and we'll put this to the top or so. And then I'm going to select both of them, right click and choose mask. All right. Sometimes I get the layer order messed up. I always forget about that. Let's put this at the bottom. All right, let me see here if I did not do that correctly. All right, so we'll select both of these and choose mask. All right. Okay. There we go. That's what we want. So that's how you can do like an actual mask. So like if you were to click into this group, then you can adjust the mask size itself, or you can also reposition the image as well inside of that mask. I think this is what we're going to use right here. I was going to do a gradient for this, but I forgot that this was an actual image that I used. You could see this would be like a 3-color stop sort of gradient, like where it's this pink to like an almost white to like a blue over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a grid. So they definitely have a grid here. So if we select the board, the artboard or the frame, whatever you want to call it, we can come over here and choose under grid plus, and then it's just kind of the same way as before. We can change, let me click plus again, change this to columns, just 12 by default. If we come over here, let me get this back up. We can change the gutter, or the margin rather, to like, I don't know, 200. All right, let's get back out. And there we go. So that's our basic grid. Let's go ahead and left click and just use a letter mark or word mark type of logo. So Gary Soft, that's my, Microsoft. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's bump this up to like 24. Maybe we can go larger. Maybe that's fine. Source Sans Pro is what they have by default. We can search fonts up here, Poppins. That's what I'm going to use. And we'll make this sucker bold. All right. So we'll go to 700 bold. All right, Gary Soft. What a stupid name. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that right up here. So I'm going to duplicate this with Control D or Command D on Mac. And we'll just hold Shift and move that sucker over right around here or so. Now for this one, typically for a navigation, I like to make the nav type a little bit smaller than whatever the logo's at. So I'll go down to like 20. I think that's fine. And then we'll also change it. I think we'll just go regular here. All right. So components. Does PenPot have components? Yes, they do. But I found them a little strange to work with. And you'll see what I mean probably here. So with this, we can see the rollers out here. We can actually drag on guides right here. And this will become handy just to ensure everything is aligned up properly. So to create a component, we can probably right click it and choose create component, or just Control or Command K. Now it's a component. All right. So you see it's like highlighted, kind of like in a bluish color. All right. We can also go ahead and duplicate that. So we can now just use our keyboard arrow keys, or just hold Shift. And now these rollers can kind of get in the way. So Control Shift R will toggle that off. All right. So if I hold Shift and move this over, maybe around here. Oh, by the way, let's go ahead and change this type. We're going to just change this just to home. And then we're going to change this one to, now I'm like really double clicking and it's like not working. Sometimes that's a little finicky. It's kind of strange. Case studies. All right. Now, one thing that I found strange is, let's say for instance, I change the font size. I decide, okay, for this component, I want all these nav links to be a little bit larger. And I decide to change the font size of this. So let's change it to like 24. Well, it doesn't end up updating any, like the instance of it. So that's a little strange to me. Now it is weird that it has these kind of like in groups over here, even though it's just text anyway. So it has the text inside of a group already. So like this must be indicative of the component itself and then whatever's inside of it. So maybe I can't change it there. All right, so let's back up. Well, geez, I shouldn't have done that. Let's do home. Let's go ahead and we have this selected, the type layer itself. Let's try 24. It doesn't update the other components. So it's like, what is the purpose of the component if it doesn't update the child instances? Let me know if I'm screwing this up, but that's one thing that was confusing to me that I could not figure out. Anyhow, let's continue on. I'm going to put this right here. Again, we're going to make this case studies. Again, there's a weird thing like trying to double click and it won't let me edit until after a couple times. Case studies. Let's duplicate that one. Now, sometimes when you duplicate, it won't duplicate the actual component, it'll duplicate the type inside of it. So you want to make sure you're selecting the component itself and then duplicate it. Hold shift. It does have this, at least, where it's showing us, the equal white space between the elements. Here I am trying to double click again. All right, so you have to wait between double clicks apparently. Case studies. What was I using here on my, all right, so clients right here. And then we'll do contact. All right, so a few things are finicky that I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. I'm sure it will improve in the future. Now let's just give this an active state color. So if we grab the current background color here and then maybe just push it over here somewhere. All right. So now we can go ahead and let's just hide this grid. And it's looking pretty solid so far. Again, like if you know how to design well, you can use almost any app. It's just like sometimes the workflow is not as ideal if you're switching apps and it becomes a little bit unfamiliar. So let's create a headline. We'll do creating sick web experiences. That's a weird headline, but that's all that came to mind. So for this, let's try just out of the blue, like 75. Maybe a little bit too large. Let's try 65. And what did it do? Something happened. I don't know what it changed. It looked like it changed the opacity, but it didn't show it as changing the opacity. So I was dealing with weird issues like that. So we could center it up here. Now let's create some cards. So we'll use a rectangle tool. That's R on your keyboard. And we'll drag out something, right around here. Let's duplicate this just to see how much space we'll have from the very right and left. Okay, that looks good to me. Okay, so rounded borders, we have that for sure. You can control all four by clicking this right here, or if you want them all the same, let's change this to like 15 and make the background white. All right, so they also have shadows, and it's pretty, if you use shadows before, you've used them pretty much anywhere. You know how to do it anywhere. I'm gonna bump this up to like 15 on the X and Y, and the blur like 25. So it's gonna be real nice and blurry. We'll go ahead and grab maybe this color right here, but maybe we'll also take down the opacity from 100% to something quite a bit less. So we don't want it to be too harsh. So I think right there is good. That's going to be 53 opacity. All right, so this is going to be our first card. Let's go ahead and create some type inside of it, uiux. That was 65. We should probably do something like maybe 40 here and then make it bold. It does also have what's called auto width right here in this middle one. Right now you can see this one is fixed. If we choose auto width, it'll just stay the width of whatever the content is inside of it. We'll go ahead and make this one bold. All right, and we'll put this nicely so we have equal white space around this container. We'll go ahead and duplicate that. Hold shift and scale it down, making M look good and function. Oh darn, I got a SpongeBob type going on there. Make him look good and function well. Okay, now let's go ahead and scale that down quite a bit more. Maybe we'll do 20 and we will make that regular for the font weight. And we'll just drag this in right around here. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay. Next up, let's do something interesting on the inside of this card. So go ahead and drag out something like right here. All right, let's use an adjacent color found in the UI right here. Let's give ourselves some corner radius, like 10. All right, and then I'm gonna duplicate that and like maybe offset this. We want these to be kind of like centered. There we go. All right, this one, I think we're not gonna have a fill, but we will have a stroke. So we're gonna add a stroke. The stroke is, like I said, just like shadow. If you use strokes in other similar apps, you'll know how to use them here. I think what we can do is maybe we can grab this over here for the stroke. Okay, cool. Now don't worry, they're not going to be hanging off the side like this. So let's go ahead and take our type here, type tool, and we're going to say featured. We're going to make this quite small, maybe like size 15 or so. All right, maybe we can even go 14 for that. And then we'll make it bold, and we will increase the tracking, so to speak. So if I go back out, you could see it's just increasing the letter spacing essentially. All right, now we'll go ahead and take this, duplicate that, reset this to 0 for the letter spacing, and this one will be regular, and this will say some project.com. And let's use the pen tool, the dreaded pen tool, for the first time. So over here we have the pen tool, or P on your keyboard. So you're gonna hold shift, just left click once, hold shift, left click another time, and there you go. It's a pen tool. I'm gonna make that a little bit smaller. Yeah, something like that. And these are kind of large, so I can probably reduce both of these. Let's do them both at the same time. Like that. Okay. Now I'll take this type, duplicate this, and we're going to put it over here. And I'll just put latest for this type. Now, let's say, for instance, let's big that up. Let's say, for instance, that we want to mask out the side of this. We don't want these to extend outside of this white container here. Well, what we do is we're going to duplicate this background right here. So Control D. And then with these two selected, holding shift, so we have 3 elements selected, this card, and this card, we'll go ahead and choose to right click and choose mask. There we go. That's how you do that. And it looks pretty solid to me for a card. So now we'll take this, we will duplicate it, Control D. This one might be something like front end dev. I'm not going to bother adjusting the other type. Let's just adjust this card. So you can Control left click, just like in Figma, to access layers quickly that might be nested in groups and stuff like that. Let's change the fill here to like a color over here, just to separate these a little bit. We can do the same thing with the stroke. There we go. All right, that looks like it's solid. And let's move this stuff up and over. Let's also change the drop shadow over here. So to do that, Control left click, drop shadow. We'll go ahead and change this to there. Now, one thing that's strange is it still looks pink to me, right? It does not look correct. So it makes me wonder, I think it's because one of these elements or the group as a whole might have a drop shadow. It just doesn't, it still looks pink. It doesn't look like it's changed to me. That looks pink and not what I adjusted. So if I move this out of the way, we select this. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, for some reason when I tried it the first time, it just didn't update. So maybe it's because it's selected. Oh, that's why. So we need to be able to select Rect 6. Okay, so rectangle 6 is the one we want to change. So if we do that again, there we go. That was my fault. So now we'll go ahead and take the, where's the opacity right here? Just use my keyboard down arrow key. There we go. So now I take both of these, move them there. All right, looking pretty solid here so far. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in some type so we could fill out this area with a primary call to action and a secondary call to action. So I'm just going to be honest, I'm just going to move this over. Oh, wait, I can't do that. Thinking I can drag stuff between windows. You cannot do that, Gary. So I'm going to put this type right here. You already know how to do type, no big deal. And then we're going to have a button. So a button, rectangle, let's choose R, drag out, I think we'll align it to the baseline of these cards. We'll go ahead and grab this background and then just kind of like really saturate it with color and make it more vibrant. All right, we'll give this a 10, I would say, for the border radius, the corner radiuses rather. Type tool, left click once, and we'll just say my work, and we'll make it white. And let's try like 24 and bold, 700. Okay, so if we were to take this type right here and set this up so that the constraints over here on the right side are centered on the top and bottom, and then we go to resize this, look what happens. That's not ideal right there. So a workaround for this is we could take this all the way out to the very left and the very right, center up the type, don't choose auto width, sorry. Center up the type. Now we take and select both of these elements. Now that they're centered, we can just move this around, although that doesn't appear to be, yeah, it is centered. It looked kind of strange to me. It's not centered. Oh, okay, because it's also changing the height here when you scale out. So if you do this, it's not staying exactly centered as you would hope. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's a good fix for this unless I do this, auto height, nope. So yeah, unfortunately, that's one downside. If you're dealing with like, create a component, typically when you have buttons, you're creating components out of them. And unfortunately, if there's not like a good system for look what's happening here. This is not ideal either for the size of this when you create a component out of that. All right. So anyhow, if I move this over here, I'm going to go ahead and just ungroup that. We're going to push this in. We'll go ahead and duplicate it, and we'll have a secondary call to action with no fill. We'll give ourselves a stroke, not a health stroke. I don't want to give myself a stroke. That wouldn't be a good idea. But we'll go ahead and put that right there. We'll go ahead and make the fill this color there, and then we'll also make it regular. All right, so this could be like hire me, something like that. Yeah, and there we go. A real simple UI, kind of like not a full-fledged UI, of course. You probably want to have more stuff here. Notice how it was pulling these down. What you would want to do is select these just to make sure that these are top for the height, and that way they won't pull down like that. So you do at least have constraints for when you resize things. But yeah, let's go ahead and create a very fast subpage. All right, so let's see here. Let's move this up, except we don't want that to happen. So we will get this image here and just pull that back down. There we go. There we go. This one might say like UI UX. Let's get this type right here. All right, and then let's hide all this. Let's delete that. Let's get this container right there. And then we'll delete that. For this drop shadow, I might want to change this to like 10 and 10. That way we can see the outline at the top a little bit slightly better. All right, and then finally, yeah, maybe we would have more type inside of it. This is annoying me. Let me change this to like 35 for the blur. There we go. We can kind of see it a little bit better. Now we're just assuming we would have content and all that good stuff here. All right, so this is our sub page. And the reason I did this is because I want to show you real quickly the prototyping. So let's say we'll make this whole card clickable. We go to prototype. We just drag it onto here just like XD or Figma. And then here are options. So you have triggers of type of mouse enter and mouse leave. All right. Navigate to is an action. We can just choose open overlay, so you can have overlays, toggle, close, previous screen, or URL. So you can have clickable links here. Destination is where we pushed it to, and then animation is dissolve, slide, and push. Obviously, not a ton like the other big guys have. Let's just do dissolve. And you also have easing there as well. Uh-oh. What's happening? There we go. Sorry about that. So now we can go ahead and reverse that. So we could take our home button and push it back there. Again, we'll change this to dissolve. And let's go ahead. They also have flows here, so we can hit play. All right, there it is. And we'll choose this card. You can see it does change the cursor. And there we go. We can go back to home. The one thing that we don't have, however, like if you want to have hover states on your components, you would have to literally like duplicate the entire artboard. So there's no such thing right at this point in time of this, recording this video, which I'm sure will change. You don't have component states. You don't have, so therefore you don't have the ability to do like hover states or selected or active, stuff like that. You also don't have the ability to just take components, like I said, and just create interesting animations like based on hover, like at the component state. Now you can do whatever you want at the board or the artboard or the frame state and change whatever you want, but then that becomes very cumbersome because you have to replicate everything, even if you just wanted to change one tiny thing like about a component. I'm sure they're going to address that as well, but at this point in time, those are the primary drawbacks. All right, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to subscribe. Check out DesignCourse.com for my interactive UI UX design platform. And as always, I'll see you soon. Goodbye.